All right, welcome to some coaching tips, an overview of your stakeholder engagement section of your chapter 3. So I'm primarily just going to talk through a few details of your chapter 3 guidebook. This is what I have pulled up. Depending on the version of your guidebook, it's probably pretty similar. Do attend to whatever file you have, but this video should essentially give a general overview for it. So the purpose of your stakeholder engagement is to establish the collaborative foundation of your improvement work. So in this way, for chapter 3 is all about our theory of improvement. We're situating right up front and center that improvement science is user-centered. Improvement science is collaborative, and we're going to talk about that. And you're also going to talk about who some of your stakeholders are and how you've collaborated with them already. You might be here, you're thinking of your stakeholders broadly, and you'll also be addressing the ways in which you've communicated with your stakeholders, either like with your fishbone diagram. Remember when you had stakeholder discussions early in your program, you worked through your fishbone diagram. You might have also worked with your stakeholders as you finalize your driver diagram. So all of the ways in which you have already collaborated with your stakeholders, you'll mention that here in chapter 3. For the length, this length is probably going to be about 4 or 5 paragraphs plus a stakeholder summary table. So we're aiming this length by number of paragraphs versus how many pages. Now paragraphs are probably around 5 sentences. Some might be a little bit more, some might be a tad bit less. Never have a 1-sentence paragraph or a 2-sentence paragraph. If you need to, I'll say this once, but I might say it lots of times. You're going to go back up to some of your writing resources, head over to the meal plan, and know that a paragraph needs a main topic sentence, some sentences with some evidence or analysis or support details, and then a linking sentiment. A 1-sentence paragraph is not a paragraph. It's a very much unfinished paragraph. Stakeholders. Okay, so 4 to 5 paragraphs plus a stakeholder table. Essentially, you're going to describe improvement science principles for stakeholder engagement, provide a rationale, and introduce your stakeholder community. Tone and approach. Throughout this entire chapter, throughout your entire dissertation, you should be using first-person narrative, like I statements and we statements throughout. Please do not call yourself the researcher. We're not here for a passive voice. We're here for a strong active voice and for you taking this first-person approach. You're also going to write this with a tone of appreciation for stakeholders' perspectives and expertise. And although that might sound a little bit silly, whether you have grudges with your stakeholders or not, you want the tone here to be appreciative, to be collaborative, to essentially be positive. Focus on collaboration and partnership rather than consultation. And maintain professional language while protecting stakeholder anonymity, meaning that you might describe your stakeholders a little bit more broadly rather than calling them out by name. Now, if someone in your organization reads about your stakeholder engagement and you identify someone as the principal, of course, that person is going to know who the principal of the school is. Same thing for director of the organization. But when you're publishing this online, it's a little bit better to have a little bit of anonymity. So say the principal or the director rather than Ms. Smith, Mr. Jones. Organization strategy and guiding questions. So here's your primary organization strategy, the guiding questions. Notice these are topics. These are not headings. These are topics that should guide the organization and the flow of your ideas. And I have a note here, avoid writing in a call and response manner, meaning that with these guiding questions for your first topic, 1 paragraph, you're not going to write, the first sentence is not going to be the answer to how does improvement science conceptualize stakeholder engagement? And the second sentence be, why does improvement science prioritize diverse perspectives, right? These are guiding questions so that you can jot down, so that you can craft your flow of ideas, okay? So you'll either see here topics or you'll see a specific level 2 heading or level 3 heading for different sections. Right now, these are just topics. So some of your guiding questions or some of your topics, you're going to talk in general about improvement science and stakeholder engagement principles. You're going to start out really broad, and then you'll see as we go, we're going to get really narrow. That's a really helpful strategy when writing. So start out big. Tell your readers what these concepts mean. Teach them about improvement science, teach them about stakeholder engagement, give them rationale, give them context. And then once they understand that, apply it to your specific scenario, to your specific organization. So there we kind of have this funnel, right? Something really broad, and we start to get more narrow as we go. So you'll see that if you step back from this it's not just an assignment, but you think of this as like from a writing standpoint, as an author, as a writer, and trying to hold your reader's hand throughout your dissertation. It's a really helpful visualization that will start kind of basic, fundamental, broad, and then we'll get really specific. Topic number 2, rationale for stakeholder engagement in your context. So rationale is the why, right? Specifically within your context, specifically with your problem of practice. So we're getting a little bit more narrow. And then describe to us your stakeholder community, who they are, what roles they play. How did you already work with the stakeholder community, i.e. for your fishbone diagram, your driver diagram, some of those early stakeholder discussions that you had? What general descriptors best capture your stakeholder groups without compromising confidentiality? So that's my hint to you of use terms like principal, director, different, I think you understand what I mean there. And then you'll end with a stakeholder summary table. So you'll present table 3 point whatever. This is probably your first table. So that should probably be labeled table 3.1. The next table, the next one that appears in your chapter 3, not the next one you work on, the next one that appears in order, in the linear order of your document, should be labeled table 3.2, the following table 3.3. So when the reader reads it, they're seeing the first, the second, and the third table. You might work on a table later on that you know is going to be the third table. Just because it's the first one you're working on doesn't mean you label that 3.1. It's the order which it comes in the chapter. Sometimes, probably not necessarily here because this chapter is pretty self-guided for you, but sometimes I'll just leave table and figure numbers 3 point whatever. We're in chapter 3, so that's why it's 3.1, 3.2, 3.3. Tables in chapter 4 will be 4.1, 4.2, 4.3, etc. Sometimes I'll leave them blank, and at the very end, I'll go back in and make sure all my numbers match up. You also must include a narrative statement somewhere in the writing above the figure, directing readers to the figure. You never, ever, ever, this is coaching for your entire dissertation. You'll see this often. You never want to just plop a figure in or plop a table in and not have it somewhere in the narrative body of your writing telling readers what that table is. You need a narrative statement. If you don't, you're just making your readers figure it all out, and it's poor writing. So again, you want to hold our hands. So somewhere you can say table 3.1 shows a summary of my stakeholders. It can be the simplest of statements, but you need to have that statement prior to, somewhere in the body of your text before that table appears. Okay. Use the sample format provided in your original template. So your template has, your chapter 3 template has a sample table template in there for you. That's a lot to say. Detail level provides specific information about stakeholder roles and connections while protecting their identities. You can include contextual details related to the problem of practice and their capacity to contribute to improvement work. Some of your writing tips. Stay organized. Use clear topic sentence for each paragraph, specifically because you don't have additional headings in this section and you have 3 different topics to work through. Make sure your main topic sentences help to cue the reader that you're shifting main ideas. As a reader, if I read every main topic sentence, just the main topic sentence of each paragraph, I should have a really good idea of what's there in that entire section. Use your resources. So Hinnant Crawford and Perry and colleagues, they talk about improvement science being collaborative, being user-centered. So pull that in and use them to frame your stakeholder engagement. Include appropriate citations, but paraphrase. Your goal here, especially this chapter 3 is kind of like your methodological chapter. You are not direct quoting Hinnant Crawford. You are not direct quoting Perry and colleagues. You are paraphrasing and incorporating appropriate parenthetical citations to that work. Avoid directly identifying stakeholders. Talk about that. Write a narrative statement. Imagine presenting this figure to an audience and helping them understand the information, the table. So when you have that narrative statement and or the way in which you write up the table, make sure that it's make sure this makes sense. Make sure that's clear. Make sure it's readable. Make sure it's skimmable. We want tables and visuals to be appealing to the eye. Tables are not a place for you to copy and paste paragraphs. Don't do that. Double check your figure number. Here, I'll adjust this and it should say table number, and ensure that you have a descriptive statement in the body. Some samples, stakeholder tables. Here are a few. These are fictional, but look at how each table displays different information and gives a robust summary. Notice how it describes them here, stakeholders at different levels of the system. So for example, table 3.1, notice the label of the table is bold and it has a number, 3.1. And the title of the table is on a new line. It's italicized and not bold. That's what APA likes. And each first letter of some of the words are capitalized. There are 3 columns: stakeholders, descriptions, and connections to your problem of practice. So some stakeholders, students with attendance challenges. This is about chronic absenteeism. The next level is classroom teachers, school counselors, parents and caregivers, attendance clerk, building principal. There's a description, a brief description for each of these, right? We just need to get a snapshot of who your stakeholders are. And then the connection to your problem of practice. How are these stakeholders related to, how are they embedded within your problem? Community liaisons was there on the next page. Table 3.2 is a sample summary of related to low volunteer retention rates at a community food bank. And so again, there's different stakeholders, different descriptions, and different connections. So your table probably shouldn't take up more than 1 page. Like, notice that these are really just using short phrases, short brief sentences. There might be 2 phrases in your connections problem, but other than that, you're keeping things concise, right? You're trying to break things down. You want your table to be essentially skimmable. Tables are great because we can convey a lot of information with fewer words, and sometimes the visualization, the organization aspect of it is what helps us there. Okay, that's all you have for stakeholder engagement.